to emotional growth and development. From Filter 90211, please welcome our guest star, Chris Slone. How do you do?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, as we know, growth and we go through a lot of things in life now. What do you think, looking back since your college age and now, what do you think you learned the most out of life?
You know, it's interesting. Life is pretty intense. And when I look back over the last 30 years, what I learned is transformation in the sense that we're always changing. We think we stay the same, but we really don't. When I was 20, then I was 30, then I was 40, I was kind of a different person at each stage. You know, we take all the experiences in life and it really starts to shape who we are and our personality. Sometimes there's things we change and sometimes not. But overall, kind of like a flower, we just transform over the years. I think that's the thing that I've learned the most to this point is that we're never static. We're constantly evolving.
Yes, and also, what about your interest?
Interior Beverly Hills 90211 Studios Day. Russ, the podcast host, is promoting Sharby to the audience. He explains the tokenomics and potential growth of the Beverly Hills 90211 Studios, also mentioning the producer's ownership of 300 million Sharby tokens. Go get some Sharby tokens. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Sharby, a groundbreaking cryptocurrency with a unique approach to tokenomics. What sets Sharby apart is that it provides USDC rewards on every trading transaction, making it an ideal investment for those seeking a passive income source. Now, our producer is a firm believer in Sharby's potential and owns a whopping 300 million Sharby token. It sounds like a lot of Sharby tokens. Imagine the possibilities when Sharby's value rises. The growth and expansion of our Beverly Hills 90211 studios would be unstoppable. As Sharby continues to evolve with multi-chain compatibility and engaged growing community, its potential for success is truly limitless. By investing in Sharby, you're not only diversifying your portfolio, but also supporting our beloved Beverly Hills 90211 Studios, which includes AI Affected, the show that we've been hosting in 90211 Studios. So, if you're excited about Sharby and its unique tokenomics, consider joining our producer and countless others in the Sharby community. Let's build a future together. And a quick AI affected disclaimer. Please note that investing in cryptocurrencies, including Sharby, carries risks. The opinions expressed here are those of the podcast host, do not constitute financial advice, nor am I a licensed financial advisor. Also, do your research and consult a financial professional before making investment decisions. The producer's ownership of 300 million Sharby tokens should be considered when evaluating the information presented. And also, please consider any energy usage on the servers that are generating that cryptocurrency and our relevant discussion.
You feel like as a young adult and as you grow older, your interest, even though you're not touching that interest, but your interest still remain the same, but you want to develop it.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be an actor. I was involved in sports and, you know, you always dream about becoming a professional athlete, but I think really deep down I knew I was always into stories and movies. And when I was a kid, I would act out scenes in the backyard with my friends. And it was before, you know, everybody had video cameras, and I would take a cassette recorder with a cassette tape and we would create our own scene in a story and we would record that in our backyard. This is going back in the 70s.
Oh.
So we kind of were doing our own little podcast, if you will, our own streaming story on cassette tape. But I always knew I wanted to be a performer and an actor. And as I got older, that never ended, even to this day. That's the core of me. But I had other interests that changed. I got into health and fitness early on as a late teenager, and never thought I would get into certain types of health and fitness like I did. I started doing bodybuilding and powerlifting, and then it evolved into running and endurance sports, and started doing cycling as an adult. So, you know, I had a lot of strong interests that as time came on kind of enveloped me.
That's wonderful, because you need to be healthy to be an actor.
You know, the interesting thing about being an actor is, and I've done all kinds of different acting. I've done theater, I've done film and TV, and it's kind of grueling. It takes a lot out of you emotionally and mentally. And I do believe you have to keep your body needs to be healthy. I think if your mind is going to stay healthy. If your body starts to break down, I think it could break down your mind. So early on as a youth, I thought, I got to keep myself strong. If I do that, it'll keep me mentally strong and emotionally strong. And you really need that as a performer. You really do.
What else else did you do for your acting, doing what you did when you were young? That was really wonderful. Stanislavski used to do that with theater.
Well, what's interesting is in the beginning, I didn't really want to do theater. I kind of wanted to do more film and TV, and you kind of get mesmerized by the lights and the cameras and everything. Really, the true part of acting that you learn, I really think, comes from being on stage and performing theater. So I was kind of afraid, actually. It was a fear of, being on stage where, what if I forget my lines? What if I forget something? I met an actor on set. I was doing, actually, very early on, I was doing some background work, and I was doing background in a movie, and one of the stars of the film was just hanging out in between scenes. I started talking to him, and I told him about theater because he asked me about it, and I said, I haven't really done it. He goes, find something you love about theater and embrace it and just take it for what it is and overcome that fear. And that's what I did. I took what I liked from theater, I embraced it, and then I fell in love with it. I think theater's a wonderful thing.
That is great. Yes, theater is a wonderful thing. You're afraid that you would forget your lines, but when you get up there, you really memorize it and really know what the story is all about. It would be very hard for you to forget it. Maybe you wouldn't say everything exactly 100%, but the meaning, the true meaning, the similar meaning will come out, and it won't mess things up.
I think it's all about overcoming fear and kind of going back to, what I've learned through life. There's always going to be fear there. I thought when I was younger that as I got older, maybe I would not fear anything anymore. That experience and maturity, you can get rid of fear, but really fear never leaves. I think it's a matter of mastering fear, if that makes sense.
And be comfortable with it. Yes, that make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I wasn't comfortable with fear early on in my life. I let fear really control me. And, I'm no different than most people, I think, in life. I think there's times in life, depending on what's going on in your life or your age or your background, a lot of people are challenged with fear. I learned early on that I had anxiety and fear combined could really take control of what you do or don't do. And as I got older, I realized that it's kind of like working out. You can build an endurance with fear and learn how to manage it. Biggest thing is you have to identify fear itself and what it is and why. Then you can manage it more.
Yes, well, but acknowledge the problem. Once the problem is acknowledged, is the problem half solved?
I had a big problem with acknowledging fear. I think
a lot of people do.
I throughout my life, you don't want to acknowledge certain things. You kind of lie to yourself.
Yes, denial.
Denial. And that denial, I think, is what stopped me early on from being able to overcome fear. Because fear is there, but you overcome it and you still will go on stage and perform. Or you will go and do something that you're, afraid to do. Or maybe you'll go up and talk to that person that you really want to talk to, but you're kind of shy and you're afraid. So that fear factor, if you will, as time goes on, you have to learn how to manage that. But I didn't want to accept it. And I didn't want to accept the reasons why. And when you start lying to yourself, or you're not honest with yourself, it really creates even more challenges.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've learned more as I got older is to be more honest with myself.
Yeah, exactly. Because being in denial is like having an enemy on your back.
Being in denial to me was like whether you're out in public or alone, you're kind of in a closet. Part of denial is you're safe. Because if you don't embrace exactly the truth sometimes is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So what I found from denial was it was safe, it was warm, and kind of fuzzy in a way where I didn't have to risk anything.
But you're not free because the truth can set you free.
I think I was a victim of that, by not wanting to be honest with yourself. You're almost like a slave then, you're captive within your own self, within your own mind. And when I look back, it was crippling. There were things that I knew I probably could have done and achieved early on in my life. But because I didn't want to accept my fear, I didn't want to be honest with myself, and I wanted to be safe, I held back by kind of staying in my own little closet and not willing to accept the truth and overcome then the fear, overcome the anxiety, overcome what I wanted to be but what I wasn't yet. And I think sometimes we battle with ourselves with that.
We do. I think actors do that a lot. The struggle from the inner cell.
It's something that I think helps me act because I could draw upon all those emotions and thoughts and fears.
Absolutely, yes.
It also helps me in my health and fitness because there's times where, I want to go and work out. It's a long workout. Or I'll get on my bike and I'll ride 30 or 40 miles all alone. And it's a way for me to clear my head. But, there's something that I read a long time ago about endurance athletes, talking about maybe, the theater, arts and acting, but in sports as well, many endurance athletes emotionally at times are running from something. So they get on their bike and ride, or they get on the street and they run, or they go into the gym and they work out. And I think early on I got into health and fitness because it helped me with that. It allowed me to kind of get out all those frustrations. It allowed me to kind of clarify things a little bit and release that. And I think in acting I can do the same as well, as I could draw upon all that, and now I could finally be more honest with myself. Honesty as an actor is everything.
Yeah.
So whatever line I'm delivering, I have to be honest.
And it's tough because you really have growth. Learn to growth and be accepted and like accepting all your feeling. You have to learn how to be comfortable with all your challenges.
It's interesting that you said that because I think as actors, artists evolve, professionals evolve, athletes evolve, we become better at it because we do that. I think we learn from it. It allows us to progress our skills and our craft.
You ever regret becoming an actor?
No, I don't.
That's good.
It's a challenging career. I think anything you do professionally is not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but I don't regret it because I'm being honest with myself. It's what I love to do.
Exactly, yes. I feel the same way, even though only 98% fail.
99%. Now I feel so much better.
Exactly. So now we have to struggle to be in those 2%.
Well, it's interesting because when I knew as a kid I wanted to be an actor, I knew that it would be tough. But I thought to myself, one of the things that I believed in is that I wanted to do something that not everybody was going to do. Where I grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and before I was born, it was a coal mining town. And
What's the name of that town? What's the name of that town?
So I grew up in a city called Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and it's in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania.
Because I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania when I just moved from Vietnam.
So Pittsburgh being on the other side of the state, steel town, USA, right? And I grew up in the coal mining towns. So it's kind of ironic, coal and steel, right? Yes. And where I grew up, you lived there most of your life. A lot of family members would live on the same street and everybody lived there their whole life. I didn't want to be there my whole life. I knew I wanted to do something different. Everybody that I grew up with wanted to be traditionally, doctors, lawyers, nurses, dentists, podiatrists. I knew I wasn't going to be any of that. So I thought to myself, well, I might as well be an actor, if I can't do that. But I knew I wanted to just stand out and be different.
That's great. At least you know what you want and you pursue it. So was it difficult? I mean, you went to college and you studied acting?
No, I went to college at first and studied information systems technology.
That's very impressive.
Well, it would have been impressive if I finished it. I was studying computer. I wanted to be a programmer and learn code and write code. And when I was in junior high, I got my first laptop computer and learned how to write basic language. A couple of friends of mine got together because they had a computer too, and we wrote our own arcade game, if you will. It was a boxing game. So I kind of fell in love with that part of technology and education. I got bored of it. I didn't really go to school at that point to be a programmer of gaming because gaming really wasn't big back then as it is now, but it was more for business and I got bored. So I actually dropped out and then went into businesses for, more general business administration. And then I finally said, hey, it's time to get this acting thing going. I probably would have done it sooner, but when I was in senior high school, we didn't have a drama club. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I started networking and met some casting directors.
Where, in Pennsylvania?
New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was a casting call, and I went to the casting call, and it was a casting director in New Jersey, and they were looking for new talent, and they kind of liked me, and so they sent me on an audition, Denarec Shampoo. It was my very
wow.
first for a commercial.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
So I I got the part. What they were going
That's
to do
great.
was they were going to film 10 actors doing the Denarec challenge with the tingling and everything, tingling on this side, not tingling on that side.
Yeah.
And I was one of the 10 that they chose. So I went to New York City, filmed it. It was like surreal. It was like the first thing I ever, and then they were going to pick one or two to kind of air on TV. I wasn't one of the ones that were chosen to air on TV, but I did it. I got paid. It was technically my first professional acting job. So it was pretty exciting.
You moved from Pennsylvania to New Jersey.
No, I was actually still living in Pennsylvania doing that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and a lot of my early part of my career, I would just go to New York City or New Jersey or Philadelphia or Baltimore, because those were the big markets, and I would audition there or do whatever roles I did, and I did that really for a long time from Pennsylvania.
That's great. For how many years?
So I did that throughout the 90s and throughout the early part of the 2000 decade. And it was kind of comfortable because I was able to still live in a market where it was cheaper to live, even though it was a long commute when I needed to go to New York or those markets. But I kind of liked it. I didn't necessarily want to live in New York City. It was expensive and crowded, and I loved being there, but I also liked going back to Pennsylvania. So there's a part of me that kind of likes the small town mentality.
Yeah.
So when I moved to California, I wanted to move somewhere that still had that feel. So I moved to Santa Clarita in California, here in the Los Angeles County area, which is kind of like, in a way, almost like where I grew up. There's mountains, there's supermarkets, and there's like a community of people that are kind of raising families, and it kind of reminds me of where I grew up. What's interesting
That's lovely.
about Santa Clarita that I didn't realize is it's kind of like really the new Hollywood, because there's so much being filmed in Santa Clarita. TV, film, documentaries, so much going on, and there's studios there and lots. So realized until I really got there that when I moved to Santa Clarita, it was like the new Hollywood.
So you're very happy there.
I am. I love it.
Great, because I lived in New York for 34 years myself, and I just moved out to LA, North Hollywood, like over 2 years ago.
So that's a big transition.
Yeah.
I went through the same transition, but I didn't live in New York. You did. So how did it feel to go from the New York experience to LA?
LA is a lot warmer, even though it's spread out a lot more, but where I am in North Hollywood is very, what you call them, close-knit. I can walk everywhere to get to AT&T, CVS, supermarket, my hairdresser, my dentist, little restaurants here and there, the bus station.
So how was the change when you first got here? Like, how did you react to it?
Well, I just go with the flow, because in 2019 I took a course that said like LA or New York. And I came out to LA for like some acting course for like a whole weekend, and I just fell in love with it. I came out again a couple months later to do a short film, and that was great. And then we came out again for Thanksgiving to check out North Hollywood and the metro station and public transportation. It's not at great New York, but it's not bad either.
So, the differences is that you were kind of talking about how you have everything in one place. So I know like New York and where I grew up in Pennsylvania, you had everything within a few miles. Like maybe within a mile you had supermarkets, stores, your doctor, your dentist, your school, everything. California is so spread out. It's so big. And I think it's another reason why I liked Santa Clarita, because within a few miles you do have everything. Where LA, it's very spread out. It's just so...
How far is it from LA?
So Santa Clarita from LA proper is probably about 40 miles, depending on where you're at in the Los Angeles area. Like Hollywood, it's probably about a little over 30 miles. So really the great thing about what I like about Santa Clarita is I still kind of feel like when I go back there, it's kind of like being in a small town, but you're 30 miles away from one of the biggest cities in the country and in the world, and one of the biggest markets in the world. It's amazing because you can kind of get away from the smog and the loud noise, and I go into the mountains in Santa Clarita there, and it's quiet.
After hearing you talk, I think real estate gonna go all the way up.
Yeah, it's really skyrocketed since I first moved to Santa Clarita. I think with the real estate boom now, it's really increased a lot. I think I got in at the right time, and that's the other thing is that very expensive to live here.
How many years have you moved there?
So it's about 8 years now.
8 years.
That I've been here in Southern California, and
you like it?
I do.
And the change from Pennsylvania to California?
There's 300 plus days a year here where there's sunshine. Back east there, it's 300 days of about cloudiness, and you get maybe, a couple of weeks of clear weather. There's things I do miss about, really like the weather and the sunshine. And I think I always knew that I wanted that environment. So I think we talk about, growth. So part of growth, I look back again, and part of growth was I needed to be honest with myself, truthful with myself, true to myself. I needed to be honest with myself. Part of that is I knew I wanted to be here. There were things that I knew that would help me. I need the sunshine. I know I need to see that sun, and I need warmer weather consistently. And also dry. The air is dry here, so
too dry sometimes, right?
A little bit too much.
Yeah, too dry.
But I can control that. My overall health, my sinuses, everything is much better. Yeah. In a climate like this. That
absolutely.
will help me be more of who I wanted. And I felt like at times I was very influenced by the weather, and that's just how I am. And I was honest with myself early on in life that I needed to be in weather that would help me be who I wanted to be. And it may sound a little bit ridiculous, but you know what? No. Weather shapes our emotions.
Yes.
Our health.
Absolutely.
And our lives. And I knew that. So I knew eventually I needed to live somewhere to help me be what I wanted to. I needed the environment and the weather that was brought along with it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. I think we should take a little break now, and we'll be back.
The ceremony begins, and the bride and the groom personified representations of Sharpie and Shiba Inu make their entrance. The officiant speaks about the unique love story between the two cryptos.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sharpie and Shiba Inu in digital matrimony. These two cryptos have found love and support in each other, and today we celebrate their journey together.
As the ceremony proceeds, the guests, including Steve, Sean, Eric, Robert, and Elon Musk, watching all. The officiant invites the cryptos to exchange their vows.
My dear Shiba Inu, from the moment we met, I knew we were destined to be together. Our life is as unique and powerful as the blockchain technology that binds us. I promise to support and cherish you, for better or for worse, for as long as our code exists.
My beloved Sharpie, your presence in my digital life has brought joy.
Okay, so is there anything that you would like to add?
I've learned a little bit about your background. Tell me what you think about what I've told you so far today. So you give me a little bit more in depth about how you worked with people on a psychological.
Well, I was a school psychologist for 25 years in New York City, and I retired. Thanks goodness for that, because at first the job was not, so bad. You get to deal with children, and you get to work with them. You get to spend a lot of time with them, and at times goes by, it become more like an administrative job, and you have like a lot of school. You don't see a lot of schools there, and you have a lot of paperwork, and you don't see children. So but now, since I moved here, I work for a non-profit organization part-time dealing with the disabled adults, and I like it a lot better because I deal directly with them, talking to them, hand-on, interact with them.
So you worked with children?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
When I look at the world today, what's going on, I remember that at the young age being in grade school, and we talked about fear and anxiety, and it's tough because there's a lot of pressure, there's bullying going on, there's a lot of stress that young kids deal with, and I'm sure it affected me as well. Plus your, as an individual, the family unit you come from affects you, and I know that it's affected me. What were some of the things that you would see in children you knew it was effects of their environment?
Oh, all kind of things, like especially the family environment. I mean, most of the time they're from a single household family, but that's not all bad if the parents divorce or break up and they're still there for the children. The children can be very well adjusted.
So it's interesting that you said that, because I grew up in a divorced family. So my parents got divorced when I was 8, and I ended up growing up with my dad. Usually, in most cases, the children are with the mother, not the father. In my case, it was different. And I knew it really had an impact on me emotionally. I think growing up and going through the challenges of school, and then you have divorce and a split family at home, it's overwhelming. I'd like to believe I was able to overcome it as best as I could, but I think you still take with you throughout the rest of your life parts of that. I think what happens though is that there's children that seem to be able to deal with it enough and overcome. Now I did go through bouts of depression when I was younger as a kid during that time, and throughout life. I mean, we we all have bouts of depression, but I think it really, affected me. I remember not feeling well a lot as a kid, stomach aches, headaches. I think it was a lot of the stress with what was going on with my mother and father. But you probably saw children that could not overcome that and probably went into deeper depression, more challenges. What did you see from when you look at children that came from divorced families? What were the extremes, good and bad, that you saw?
Well, it all depends. Violence tendency is better if they don't stay together. If there's violence in the family, overall, if they work it through, they have to work it through. If they don't work it through, it might be difficult. When it affects the school work of a child, what you can do is you can refer them to certain program that might help them learn differently. If you have from a broken home, a lot of issues. Sometimes it affects the children's needs, and sometimes the children have special needs that they need extra help anyways. But if they have two parents that they seem to grow much better, or if they have two parents in their lives, or if they work on themselves, they have support too. The school, they're willing to go to for support, willing to get counseling, willing to get all the family members to support them, then they would do better.
Is there a certain child that you could remember that really had a hard time overcoming all that, and that you probably wonder to this day?
Yes. Yep, many.
Where are they? Are they alive? Are they doing okay?
Yeah, I don't know, because school psychologists, we're not allowed to have relationship with the children.
I look back when I was growing up at that age in the 70s, early 80s, and now I look at what's going on now, and now it's, back then we didn't have social media.
Mm-hmm.
The news didn't travel quite as fast, so I don't know back then if there were kids with guns as much as there are now.
Some they have guns, sometimes they have knives, and sometimes they sneak knife into their bag without realizing it, just like a box cut, little things, the cut box, something like that. They just throw them in their backpack and they don't realize it, and they went through security and they got stopped. And I never seen or heard of anyone with gun in my own school, but I heard it from other school.
In your experience, do you think, because I always try to be aware of things. I think it's part of, one, I live in society, so I'm a member of society. Two, I also write, so I like to look at what's going on in the world, and, is that going to shape my next story that I want to write? So I really try to pay attention to a little bit of everything. In my opinion, it seems like it's really getting more intense and worse with children now, with challenges, and they're becoming very violent. Mm-hmm. In your whole career, do you see it definitely becoming more extreme and more violent?
Yes.
Or is it just that we're able to see and hear of this more often now because of technology?
No, I think they become more violent, and they don't realize it, and the circumstance, the situation can be really, really tough on them.
I look back and I wonder how I did it without becoming violent, without really going to another extreme. And, I think part of it was probably because I was more of a fearful person anyway, what would happen to me if I did something.
Yes, and
but,
you said you lived it with your father, and your mother was around too. You saw your mother, and you get some support from her at least.
Correct, I did. I mean, my father passed a few years ago. He's no longer alive. But he brought me up in a very, they call it old-fashioned way. You better not get in trouble. So I was afraid of him. He was a Sicilian guy that had the ability to try to keep control, and I was definitely the type of person that did not want to get in trouble, because I was more fearful of what he would do. I wasn't afraid of anything else, but like, what would he do if I got in trouble? So, I think, looking back, he probably kept me out of trouble in the sense that, he had a very strong way of dealing with if you do something wrong. So I knew that if I got in trouble, I was going to pay for it, and I didn't want to.
But he was responsible for you. He took care of you.
Yeah, he was.
Well, one time we were sitting around with all the mental health care professionals within the school. They said, like, counseling doesn't help All they need is a good father.
I agree with that, but I still think counseling is needed. If I was an adult now, well, I am an adult. I guess sometimes I still think I'm a child.
A child at heart.
You know,
Young
I
at
think
heart.
I think what I wanted to say was, if I was a parent now, because I don't have children, I would want my children to go through therapy, especially if there's a divorce.
Yes.
I look
Yes.
back, I needed therapy when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, it wasn't talked about.
It wasn't popular back then.
And my father was definitely not the type that would accept that. It was more accepting, it's done in the home with the parenting, which is important. But I probably needed counseling. I think everybody on this earth needs some form of counseling.
Support,
But I
yeah.
really needed counseling probably back then. Didn't get it, struggled through things, probably slowed down progress.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, one, I agree, what you said. Having a father, having a mother in your life is the anchor, but you still need counseling, in my opinion.
Yes. I agree with you completely.
So again, going back to, I see so many things going on in this world now with people that are going into schools and creating violence. What, in your opinion, what's the answer to this?
Boy, this. I wish I knew that, like I said before, maybe they don't have any kind of support at home. There might be some kind of abuse at home that's not legal, but they don't talk about. And it's so easy to get gun and bullet.
Yeah, and I think that's, creating, for many years now, a political storm of what's
Yes.
right, the right to bear arms, constitutional rights. But yet, is it the guns or is it the people?
Yes,
And,
I was
I
more
don't
like the people and the bullets,
Yeah, and, it's kind of like, the whole political discussion is a whole other topic, but, I just wonder when it's going to end. But it just seems like, I think even if guns were outlawed, and there's always there's always a black market for things. People will get what they want. So I don't know if that would ever stop things. Maybe make it a little bit more difficult. But if people want to get something, and I'll tell you what, I think the youth of today they're very intelligent. They'll find ways to get things if they want. So I don't know if that's actually the answer, but I think the answer, as far as what's going on that in their lives, that there's a gap, and they're missing things that will create this anger and violence. And I think that's really what we need to focus on.
Yes, I mean, probably lack of love and attentions, lack of real love, Like they said, people would say, but I love my kids, I love my kids. Are you there for them? Like one of my professors said, how can my children do this? I talk to them all the time. And they would say, but do you listen to them?
Yeah, and I think, I don't think we're always being heard, especially when we were kids. And I think even adults, because we still have a lot of violence with adults as well. So, it goes from the youth to the adult age. And, I think as human beings, we want to be heard.
Yes, and plus, if that's true, want to be heard, and if they should experience more love, more forgiving, that sort of things. Talk things out, work things out.
So, what are your thoughts about meditation?
That's a great idea. If people believe in it, willing to find a time for it, that's like the best things right now.
I think sometimes we could be more within ourselves when it's quiet and we're alone. We're in a really busy, hectic, stressful world now. It's much different than it was growing up.
And we should learn how to meditate within a chaotic environment too, within noise, within a noisy environment.
So-
you walk down the street or sometimes you don't have a place to meditate. Do walking meditation, just walk down the street and meditate within yourself, or just sit anywhere. And you can't control the environment, the noise, unless you are somewhere in the country.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think I've done that. I think I've meditated in the loud noises of the city or life. Yeah, we can't always control, our time, our schedule when we want to be alone. I guess that makes sense. Do you do that?
Sometimes. Not as much as I would like to, but yes, believe in meditation.
I think one of the challenges that I look at as an adult now about growth and meaningful areas of my life is when I turned 40, I got really depressed.
Oh, really?
I did. When I turned 40, I didn't like it. When I turned 30, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I'd like, wow, I got the whole world in front of me. I got my whole life, and I'm where I want to be. But when I turned 40, really depressed.
So what do you do on your 40th birthday?
For a year or two, I couldn't get it out of my head. I mean, I just went on with life, but I didn't know. It was the first stumbling point I had since I was in my 20s. It was like I was on like the freeway, the Autobahn going, 200 miles an hour, and then boom, it was like hitting a wall when I turned 40. And I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know how to accept it. It was the first time in my life that I felt my mortality was real. I'm definitely going to get older. I'm gonna die eventually, right? And it wasn't about death. It was that I'm more of a control person, and I like to control myself and things around me as much as I can. Well, I'm a Taurus, so we're stubborn. I've got a lot of Sicilian in my blood, so we're stubborn. I really think that I felt like I was not in control anymore. And when I look at it, well, we're not in control of aging. I mean, we can slow it down, but we can't stop it. So I think that was the big part, is that, you realize, like, I can't control that.
Right, and you have problem with being out of control.
I do. Personally, I
see.
do. Yeah, I don't like being in control of anything, really. I mean, it's frustrating because, you realize there's a lot of things you don't control, mostly everything except maybe yourself. But yeah, that was the hardest part. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I just thought, how do I handle this? And I think sometimes part of development is progression in time. What's interesting is the old saying, time can heal all wounds. I think time can heal ways. So as the years started to go by after I turned 40, acceptance, going back to acceptance, being truthful with yourself. And by the time I was about 43, I was past it. And I thought, well, what am I going to do when I turn 50? Well, let's learn from experience. So what I've done and I've tried to do my whole life is, I know I was the type of person that if anybody's going to make a mistake, it's going to be me. Anybody's going to do something wrong, it's definitely going to be me. Why? Just because I'm a human being, and I know myself and I know my track record, I'll make mistakes. But I'm going to learn from it. I have to learn from it. So I thought, I got to learn from this because I'm going to eventually turn 50 and then eventually 60. And who knows after that. So what am I going to do? So part of development is you need to learn from experience.
Experience, from life, from education, from whatever comes along.
So when I turned 50, no problem. It was like, so I think what I overcame turning 40 is going to help me now the rest of my life at whatever age I get to, because it creates a humbleness to you, and you allow nature and life to be in control, because you can't be in control of that. Now I do my best to fight it. So I take care of myself, I eat good, and I try to do my best to stay younger and not abuse myself,
And you're more acceptant of yourself. See, when you turn 50s, it feels like you accept your personalities. You are what you are.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you're more acceptant of it.
I do accept it. I think that's the problem I had when I was younger, and the problem I had, middle age, was acceptance to yourself. I didn't accept myself for a long time, probably up until my early 20s, because I didn't really like who I was. Again, I grew up and I saw people around me, and I thought, I don't fit in with them. I don't have the same interests, and even though you get along with your friends and everybody in your community, if you will, but you feel you're different, and I just knew that I wasn't going to be like everybody else, and I needed to accept that, and I didn't, and I think that held me back. And as life went on and overcoming fear, just accept who you are, go with it, and you'll go further in life than you could ever imagine if you accept yourself.
Absolutely.
And learn.
You live and you learn.
So I'm excited about the future mistakes I'm going to make, because I'm going to learn from those.
You're going to learn from it, yeah. What about, you ever look back on the past mistakes, especially with relationships? Regret it?
Relationships?
Yeah, in relationships.
You know what?
Whether it's friendships or romantic relationships or professional relationships.
I do. I mean, there's things that I regret of how I treated people and acted towards people, and whether they were romantic relationships relationships or friendships. There's things I regretted, and I think I've learned from a lot of it. But yeah, you know, back in moments of my life, and I like to do that because, again, I'm big into stories and how characters evolve. And as an actor, when you take on character, the character wasn't just born then. Character has had a whole life up until the point you're playing that part.
Yeah, exactly.
So I need to create that backstory.
The history of the character.
The history. And when I look at my history evolving as a person, as a character in life, boy, there's a lot of things I regret. And I look back, wow, I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I said that. And some things bother me this day still. I like to believe that I could use that for the better person. And I think one of the things I do want to do every day is as good as I can be and be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah, like I said, you know, be more loving situation person. Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah, I think I had a problem with love of myself, and then if you have a problem with love of yourself, you have a problem sometimes loving other people. And I think love is a overrated, or should I say underrated?
Yeah, love it, acceptance.
It's underrated because without love, you know, how do you get through life without love? I mean, how do you have great relationships? How do you have great relationships with the world? Because most of the people in the world are strangers to us, but if we love one another, we could still live with one another in the same world. And I think that's, you know, really key. You know, it's really important, and that becomes the ability to become a better person. And again, I look back at relationships that I had, and I could have did better, but you know what? We can only do what we can do that day, and then the question is, what do we do from there? You know, why do you ask that question about relationships?
Just wondering. Curious, you know, how actors and their relationships.
Well, I like to think that part of me is romantic, and part of me is using emotion. And I'm a very emotional person. I may not always show it. Part of being an emotional person sometimes and a controlling person is you don't want to show the emotion, and that I think hurt me early on in my acting career. I had a hard time releasing what I knew was there, better actor, because I didn't want to show my emotion to my community, to the people that I was growing up with or living with. You don't want to, you know, that controlling factor in my life. I want to be in control. I don't want you to know I'm sad or happy or whatever. I want to control that. That's a problem when you're an actor because you need to release those emotions. So early on, I had to struggle with that. I think I still struggle to this day with that, but I think I know how to exercise and work through
Handle it better.
Yeah, and I think it could bring out a better performance in me by doing that.
Yeah. So, do you have any great project in the past that you're going to talk about?
Great projects. You know, I'll tell you something I always wanted to do, and I did it, and it was a beautiful experience. And again, I'm going to bring this back into development, personal growth. So, growing up, wanting to be an actor, not necessarily wanting to be a stage actor. As I evolved, I eventually broke the barrier of fear with stage, and I started doing theater. And there's one part I always wanted to play. I wanted to play Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire.
Wow.
And
that would be a great character to play.
I think it's a phenomenal character, dark character, but through life and where I came from and all my emotions, I really was able to understand the role and the character and relate to it in a way. But a lot of theater is musical, and I wasn't really vocally inclined, though I do sing in the car and shower, but you know, a lot of theater was musical. I did a lot of musical theater, but it kind of wasn't the only theater I wanted to do. And I thought, you know, I want to do drama. I want to do Streetcar. So I produced my own production of Streetcar. I said, I'm just going to do it.
Where?
So I did it in Pennsylvania years ago in Northeast PA. I was looking at, should I do it in New York? I could do it off Broadway, New Jersey, but you know, it was a bit costly, and I was going to produce it myself. So I didn't have a lot of money to do it, so I couldn't really do it in New York City like I would have wanted to do off Broadway somewhere. So I ended up doing it in northeastern Pennsylvania in Wilkes-Barre, and this was in 2006. And I said, I'm just going to go for it. So I produced it myself financially, casted it, I directed it, and I started it. And to me, that was just a beautiful experience because I was able to do a few things with my craft in the industry. Was one, do a role I always wanted to do. So that to me stands out in my life right now. I just, you know, I love doing it.
And you were in it too, right?
Yeah, I played Stanley. And it allowed me to flex some of the muscles that you need in the industry. Other than acting, I had to produce it, so I was the producer. I had to cast it. I was the casting director.
That's wonderful.
I directed it, so I was directing. So I kind of had all the risk, but I knew that I was onto something within myself, that if I could do this, then I could probably do anything. And I did it with limited funds, but I was able to fund it. I even brought on some charities, so portions of the proceeds went to charity, and it was incredible. When I look back now, that's still like the highlight of my career. And again, it was on a regional theater stage, so it wasn't like the whole world saw, but it was
Fueling.
It was very fulfilling. And there's been some previews now of Streetcar. I know over in Europe the Streetcar was coming back, and I thought, wow, boy, I would love to be Stanley again.
Well, maybe you can do it again.
I would love to.
Theater, but to do a play like that again.
I would love to do it on stage, but I would also love to do it on film.
Make it a remake.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I think actually,
if you do a remake, I'll definitely audition for it. Blanche Dubois' role.
There you go. Blanche?
Yeah, but that's really wonderful. Like my past experience, I was in this movie called Accidental Getaway Driver. Best dramatic directing at Sundance Festival.
Well, that's exciting.
Yes, I think it's being negotiated.
And when was that?
This year, last January.
Very exciting.
Well, it's a wonderful, beautiful experience. It's a Vietnamese American film based on the true story.
And it's called Accidental
Getaway Driver.
Getaway Driver.
Story of 3 escapes. Orange County. And I played it, the soul sister. And the actor was the wonderful Dustin Nguyen. Played it his soul sister.
Oh, wow.
It was a beautiful experience.
So what did you learn about the true story background of that while you were filming it, or maybe in action? I mean, what do you know about it?
Sensational, because I knew that we both to America, we immigrate here around the same time. However, I have a better family situation than he does, and he did. Well, he probably came here by himself, and I have a family, and somehow we call each other like brother and sister, because we were friends as a child, teenager, grew up. We still like keep in touch, because in that driver that he kidnapped my home, because I guess I was the only around. I'm gonna tell you the rest because I want you to see the film. Very, very sensational. And they showed it at Sundance Festival in the auditorium, and it sold out days before it started.
What's the most memorable part of filming?
Just really very emotional, the fact that here come my soul brother, who's like my best friend, someone I grew up with, got in trouble, I couldn't help him, meant a lot for me also. Found out that he's safe. You escape, you don't know what's going on.
Do you know people growing up that have gone through that?
Time I prison reason, sitting on his laps, these we feel better, because I remember I was across the room, I saw a 10 years old sitting on her father's lap, and I said, gee, isn't she kind of sitting on her father's lap? That's all I remember. I wasn't happy being there. I remember that too.
How did that affect your childhood?
You feel kind of sad, didn't like it. It was not comfortable. That's something I experienced, but I did.
And how long was he in prison?
I think it's for a few months at the time.
Did it change you as a child, you think, through that?
I guess so, but I wasn't sure how, but must.
When you look back at it, how do you feel about it now?
I didn't like it. I still didn't like it. I wish I never have to gone through that, but that's something that happened in a war country.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in the United States. I'm thankful. I didn't have to deal with what children go through in other countries. I watch a lot of documentaries on different countries and what people had to do to be free or to survive. And, that's a different, if we talk about growth and development, that's completely different. That's right. And I can't even imagine what it would be like, a child growing up in a country where put in jail for political reasons, censorship, aspects of that country where you're really not free, and families are separated and people are literally risking their lives to get out. I don't know what that's like because I grew up in the United States.
Difficult, because I came here without my father, and he never made it over here. He died in '88, and I never seen him again when I left Vietnam.
And how old were you when you left?
I was almost 12.
So the last time you saw you when you were 12 years old?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, 11 and a half, something like that. It's very difficult, but you learn.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do to survive.
Yeah. Well, I think what's amazing is when I see these stories of people, what they did to survive all that. Prison camps, concentration camps, political prisons, human spirit. I think about, wow, they had to do mentally and emotionally through that. And then, I'm watching these stories, and now they're telling the story, fact, and that they survived, and the inner strength that's needed, courage, and I think think in life we all have to grow courage and eventually do what it takes to survive. And it doesn't matter what level of survival. It could be financially, it could be spiritually, it could be country you live in, or whatever it is. But what I learned from those stories is extreme courage.
Yes.
And I think I've been able to grow more courage as I've gotten older throughout life. And I don't know how people were able to do things that they did at certain ages, because I think as I adapted, I got a bit stronger as I got older. But I see stories of people and hear stories like yours, and I don't know how I would have been able to deal with that.
Well, I think when you're in the situation, you have choice to learn how to survive.
Yeah, it's kind of like fight or flight.
Yes, that's it.
Right? You either are going to give up or you're going to get through it. And I think part of fear is sometimes fear of taking on challenge, because you don't want to go through an experience. And I think it's important, everyone, to be able to continue to challenge yourself, brace what's uncomfortable, and go after it. Because I think if we don't do that, we never really continue the journey. I think we put ourselves kind of in our own little prisons.
We would die inside ourselves.
Yeah. And I felt that. I felt myself at times in my life kind of dying because I wasn't willing to become uncomfortable and go through challenges. So again, back to where I
Excuse me.
Oh, God bless you. I remember going, into my closet, if you will, my mental closet. Safe. Then you don't grow, you don't transcend, and you have to be. I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I want to go through that. Bless you.
Excuse me. Yes, the closet. So learning how to be uncomfortable with your own emotion. We're back to that again. It's very challenging. It's very difficult learning how to deal with the situation that we are at right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Most of the time when I was there, I said, okay, I have to go, make sure I stay out of trouble, don't get in trouble. Job, teacher told me. Simple. Sounds easy. Sounded easy.
It's not easy.
It's not.
No, it's not. Really not easy. I think a simple analogy that I've heard my whole life is, you're going through life challenges. It's like steel and iron. It goes through the fire, and it's got to go through that fire to get strong. And in life, there's a lot of fire.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And sometimes you got to go through it.
A lot of mountain to climb.
So based on all your years of experience working in psychology with children and adults, what do you make of me? Was I normal? Did I go through kind of a normal life?
Define normal.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know what normal is. Maybe there is no normal. Maybe
right.
It is
normal
what it is.
By society, normal by certain people, normal by the artists, normal by the politicians.
Based on the story I told you of my life to this point, was I going through what considered standard when you go through a divorce with your family when you're a little kid? And
yes, but you probably are a little more blessed than most.
Probably am. Yeah, I have to admit, I always had food on the table when I was a kid and a bed to sleep in and safety.
And they love you?
Yeah, I was loved,
So it was actually a good divorce.
I guess compared to some, it probably was. My mother and father didn't really talk much, though. And I think that was a challenge that when we saw my mother, we couldn't see my mother with my dad. So we had to see her separately. And that was a challenge, That was hard. We got through it. So am I normal? I guess that's my question.
I think you are terrific.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think I struggled for a long time in my youth. I did my best to continue to move on. But I always thought I was really abnormal, though.
Oh, really?
And I think that's another reason why I said, hey, come to Hollywood if you're abnormal and crazy or you have personality
or live
issues.
in New York City.
I mean, come on. So, when I knew I was really different than everybody I grew up with, and I thought differently, and I felt like I was a strange person compared to everybody else, I'm like, where do I fit in? And I always knew that, be an actor in Hollywood, because nobody fits it. We're all, misfits in some ways, Not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of great performers that came from really impressive backgrounds and education. But I think I always looked at it like, what? I mean, think about it. In Hollywood, do a lot of crazy things and still be accepted. So I thought, if many people that have done a lot worse than me are still accepted, then this is my home because I should be accepted. And that was kind of my thought, is that, what, maybe I was meant to be an actor for that reason because I knew I would be accepted in that enterprise, in that arena, no matter what. Because I knew I wasn't the standard person that was just like everybody else.
Like you say, misfit, conventional misfit, but could it be misfit in a wonderful, remarkable ways.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's remarkable yet, but definitely, I turned the misfit part of me into more creative. And I'm glad I'm different than some people. And
That's the best
it's
way.
what makes us who we are, but also I remember I said a while ago I was telling you when I was growing up, I wanted to be different than everybody else. I didn't want to necessarily do what everybody else was doing and necessarily have the white picket fence and the dog and you're a chiropractor. I mean, I didn't want to do that, and probably because I knew I couldn't. I don't think I had the aptitude to go to school for that type of thing and learn it. But I always thought in ways that was, some parts of life could be boring. I wanted the excitement. So I think I embraced that. I was different, and you know what? Maybe that's the way my life should be. And it's what kept me wanting to be an actor, wanting to go to Hollywood, wanted to, have a very abnormal life, but hopefully in a positive way.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Not a 9-to-5 job in the houses. Well, white picket fence, nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe metal, tall metal fence.
I don't have I have a home here, but I don't have a white picket fence technically. But I kind of have the home now. I have dogs. Yeah. I have 3 dogs.
That's very nice.
Cats
actually.
and tortoises. So I have kind of a family. But I think it's more. I think when I talk about the white picket fence is kind of more symbolic, just towards kind of the lifestyle that was kind of promoted in the United States as I was growing up. Was you went to school, then you went to college, and then you got a job for 40 years, and you had a house, and you raised a family. And that's how it was where I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's America. That's the American dream, right? Because you're protected, you're safe, and you can live life comfortably. An element of that kind of bored me growing up because I never thought I wanted to have a big family and have kids. And the idea of that wasn't exciting. I didn't, come out of high school thinking, I want to get married and have kids and have a house. I wanted excitement.
Yeah.
I wanted something different. I wanted to be different. So that's why I looked at the fact that I was different anyway, embraced that part of it. And that's how I actually started to embrace who I was, you know what? I know I want more excitement. I know I want different things than the average person. Well, I won't get that certain ways, but I can get it if I take risks and kind of let control go, because especially in this industry, in entertainment, you have to be willing to be humble, expose yourself, and people are going to reject you and say no.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Rejection, yep.
You're gonna audition, or you're gonna go on stage, and people may reject you. You got to be willing to open yourself up for that. So I thought, well, in a way, it kind of helped me accept who I was by doing that, and then I could try to have maybe the life that I thought I wanted. At the end of the day, though, I do like going home and just being and chilling out and
being with the dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Well,
But I do. I like the excitement though of other things.
A lot of actors, they have a big family too, like 3-4 kids.
Yeah, I never did that. I think it's too late now.
Well, I never did it either. I only have one.
Really? Yeah.
I only have one.
One child, and son or daughter. And how old is she?
3.
23. Oh, wow. So I wonder what it would have been like to have, growing up, a mother that was trained in psychology.
That you have to ask her. But once, a lot of actors and directors was there. It's in New York, on the Upper West Side. And one actor, she was like, I don't think mental health care professionals, parents at all. She was saying it.
Really?
Yep. And I say, oh, really?
What would your daughter say about growing up with a mother that's a trained psychologist?
I would say it depends on her mood.
Yeah?
It all depends on her mood.
So what would you, if I was growing up through a divorce, and you were my mother and you were a trained psychologist and you divorced my dad, divorced each other, call it, how would you have helped me get through that?
First, I would make sure that I would be friends with your father. Because once you have a child with someone else, you connect with them for life. Child is the product of your connection. I would think it better for me to try to be friends with the partner.
And my mother did actually try to be friends with my dad. He just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
He couldn't deal with it.
He couldn't deal with it. So, it would try to be at least like cordial, civilized. No fighting, no bitterness after the divorce.
There was a lot of bickering going on in my childhood between my parents, and it was pretty bad. But, not really in the domestic violent way, but it probably could have been, but it didn't. Yeah, but they didn't really communicate. My mother wanted to, most of my young adulthood, and my dad didn't want to do it. So that made it difficult.
Yes, because usually when they divorce, they do go into therapy together nowadays, so they can create a best environment, a better environment, or the best environment for their kid, best that it could be.
Yeah, we could have used a lot of therapy back then.
Most people do. But nowadays they believing it more. So hopefully the world is getting better, especially when they have something like that happen, especially when they're divorced or something.
Yeah, and it just seems like divorce continues to rise. I don't know. It just seems like everybody eventually gets divorced. I don't know.
That's a shame.
A lot of people divorced. But what's interesting is I do meet people that are divorced and their life gets better. So maybe they were with the wrong person. Maybe it didn't work out. Maybe they couldn't be who they wanted. But a lot of times when I meet divorced people, they progress in life, and so they develop. So it could kind of lead us to think, well, you have the spiritual and religious part of marriage, which is a vow, but then you have the other side of, do you do that at the mercy of yourself and losing yourself? What if it is a bad marriage? What if the person is to the point where they're stopping you from being happy?
Yes, yeah.
Where is the line drawn with that?
One of my friends in college, she got divorced, progressed really well. Her children were in college or something. They're not little. I think they left the house.
And how did it turn out?
Turned out successful for them, at least for her, because I'm friends with her.
So that's my point, is that I think there's times maybe where, it is a good, it's...
But you know what? The thing is, like, if the man stay emotionally with a woman and support her decision with her career to grow, with her whether career or whatsoever, or educational, we fine. While the other spouse say, okay, if you want to go out and this is your time because you raised the children already.
I agree with that. I think that if you're married, you have to let that person be who they are.
Right, you're supposed to be
and accept
supportive, emotionally supportive.
And it's not always easy. And if you're a stubborn person or you want control, then you're going to not allow that other person to be who they are.
And the marriage would end.
Yes, absolutely.
But many people stay married too. Many people stay married for like 40, 50 years or even until they do them part and they're happy. So we also have a bunch of happy people out there. We just don't know about it because once they're happy, they keep it to themselves.
I know. But I think there's also people that stay married long until death that aren't happy though. And I think there's, after a while, it's probably a combination of habit. You get to a certain age, what are you going to do? Start a whole new life.
Yes.
You have children and grandchildren, and there's just too much history there. And I think people will stay together even though they probably don't want to be with each other.
Happiness is difficult, but they stay together because they love each other and they want a family. They can work on it. It's never too late to work on being happy.
It's interesting you said happiness is difficult.
Yes,
it is, isn't it?
They say going through life, love is going through life together. And a lot of people would say like, this is love. I don't know what happiness is.
Happiness is difficult. Why is that?
Find it within yourself. You have to be happy with yourself first. Be happy with somebody else's. Nobody can make you happy but yourself.
But what if we're afraid to do what we need to do to be happy?
That's the problem. Fear and denial. Then you never be happy.
And I think that's something that we've all battled in our lives. Courage to be happy and to do what we know we need to do to be happy. I think we're always battling that. I can't speak for anybody, but is everybody 100% happy? Do they have everything they
I don't know anybody's 100% happy. They can be happy with themselves. They can be happy with their partner. They can be happy with their family members. But I don't know anybody can be 100% happy or not, because life is not perfect.
Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to be perfect. I don't think life is perfect.
Yes, that's right. We're here to finish our karma and things better in this life.
Yeah, it's one heck of a journey.
Yes, it is.
When I look
and it's up to us to make it exciting.
What's that?
Us to make it exciting.
Yeah.
Page, and we're supposed to draw and write, create on it.
And that piece of paper is our lives. Right?
Yes.
It's up to us to paint certain things in that we want.
You can write a poem, or you can paint it, wash. You can do figure drawing, whatever. Choice is yours.
That kind of jumped into my head when you said that, is the hobbies we take up as we live life. And so like I kind of look at the metaphor of what you said. So our lives, it's like it's a piece of paper. Draw on it what you want, paint what you want. But then that reminds me of the hobbies we take up as we live life. And you wondered, are those hobbies and interests because of influences in your life, or did it just pop into your head that I want to do this or do that? What do you think?
Probably. They said creativity. In psychoanalysis, they say creativity is rage, maternal rage, basically.
What do you think?
Probably, and copy too.
So there's rage involved with creativity?
Rage involved, and also because like one of your parents could be creative, you don't know that, or want to be. Your father wanted to be a fitness instructor or an actor. He might have, but you don't know that. You just pick up his unconscious.
I think that I never thought of the word rage, but when I said earlier how I got into fitness and endurance activities because I had pain that I needed to release, emotional pain, and by running or cycling or working out, I'm able to release that. It never goes away. It's kind of like hunger. It never goes away. You have to eat. There's always that in me, and I think looking back, there probably was rage rage involved in that. And you do the activity, and in my case, it was athletic because it would wear me down physically. So I was so tired that I couldn't feel that pain as much anymore. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you're to the point of exhaustion of working out or doing something, and then all of a sudden it kind of dulls it because you're just exhausted. But I think it is an anger or a rage or whatever that is the fuel and energy that pushes you to go out and run or ride a bike hours till you're just drained. Because I don't think it's just the fuel of the food that you ate do that, the nutrients. I think it was emotional, and I still do that to this day. Now, again, whether it's anger, rage, fear, it's everyday life. I think we have to channel that. So it goes into that creativity, whether we draw, write. I think part of why I got into writing when I was younger, I would write short scripts and stories, is there was a way to release it,
Yes.
right? And to get it out.
Yes, it is a wonderful way to release it.
But what do we do constantly as we get older in life? Do we have a responsibility to ourselves to continue to understand that so we can release that rage?
You say that releasing rage, don't do anything creativity, getting out, doing things, climbing mountain, that's release a lot of rage. It's like playing hockey, I always feel like you really smash someone, release rage.
So what about an individual that's into extreme activities and sports that are really risk-taking, literally? So, is it the level of rage that will depict the intensity of our activities?
Probably conscious level.
So if an individual has a hobby where it's an extreme sport, like, rock climbing, or downhill cycling on a mountain, off-road, skiing, people are jumping out of copters on a snow-capped mountain and skiing down it, a helicopter. I mean, there's really extreme stuff out there. These individuals then, maybe at a higher intensity of rage, is that they need such an extreme activity that they literally are putting maybe their life on the line to be able to offset that amount of rage. So my question then to you would be is the level of activity measured by the level of rage?
Sometimes, and depends on the individual. Which is like adventures, dangerous. I think like dangerous adventures, like you said, the helicopter, it's snowing downhill too much. I mean, unless, it's a safe zone. You know what I mean? If they slide downhill skiing by jumping off the airplane and then downhill and the zone is safe and it's different. But how many times you can have a really safe mountain that everything clear out for you to ski down?
Yeah, makes you wonder, huh?
Yes, I wonder. Well, yeah. Are you hungry yet?
I'm slowly getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hungry. I think that we should stop right now and go get
Have
something to eat. Yes. Well, thank you so much, and it's very nice speaking to you.
It was great talking with you, and you know what? I think. Oh wow. Okay.
There's muffins and all kinds of stuff here on the craft service table.
You mind if I have this, or you want half?
Please.
No, go ahead. What I was going to say was I really enjoyed the conversation. I really liked talking about a lot of things that in life as human beings we have to experience, endure, and overcome. It never stops. It's a constant reminder that we're always evolving every day. Everything we do, I'm good, thanks. Everything we do and experience, we take with us, and we choose to use what we want to use. Sometimes I think, sometimes we use things involuntarily that we don't realize we're using. It's not really our choice. But it gave me perspective to really think about where I've come from and where I've been and where I'm at, and appreciation. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The word appreciation. I'm grateful for the conversation. I'm grateful for all my experiences in life, and I have more to achieve, more to overcome, and challenge of it. I know I've been struggling with that my whole life, but I think I'm better than I was in the past, and I'm constantly working to improve. Happiness.
Right.
Thank you.